During the Second World War, there were families who harvested fresh vegetables on Christmas morning, fresh greens in February, fresh roots in March, fresh food every single day of the year, even when snow covered the ground and temperatures dropped below zero. They didn't have greenhouses. They didn't have electricity for grow lights. They didn't have heated buildings or climate control or any of the technology we assume is necessary for year-round growing. They had knowledge that had been passed down for generations, knowledge that turned a small backyard into a 12-month food production system. While their neighbors waited for spring to plant and fall to finish, these families never stopped harvesting. January, July, October. It didn't matter. Something was always ready to eat. And here's what should make you furious. This knowledge was systematically erased after 1950. The grocery industry needed customers who believed fresh vegetables were impossible in winter. The seed industry needed gardeners who thought the growing season had boundaries. The entire food system needed you to forget that your great-grandmother harvested salad in December without any modern technology. They succeeded. Today, most gardeners plant in May, harvest until September, and spend 7 months buying vegetables from stores. They've been taught that winter gardening is impossible, that year-round production requires expensive equipment, that fresh food in February is a fantasy. They've been lied to. In this video, I'm showing you the exact system that World War II families used to grow vegetables 365 days a year. No greenhouse, no electricity, no expensive equipment. Just techniques that worked for centuries before someone decided you shouldn't know them. By the end, you'll understand why they buried this knowledge, and you'll have everything you need to dig it back up. If you're new to this channel, we uncover forgotten growing methods that the food industry has spent decades trying to erase. The techniques your great-grandparents used. The systems that create independence instead of dependency. The knowledge that threatens everyone who profits from your inability to feed yourself. Subscribe now because this information changes everything. And share this video with everyone who thinks gardening ends in September. Now let me show you how families during World War II produced fresh food every single month of the year. Number 1, the cold frame revolution. The cold frame is the most important piece of year-round gardening technology ever invented. It costs almost nothing to build. It requires no energy to operate, and it extends your growing season by 4 to 6 months in most climates. A cold frame is simply a bottomless box with a transparent lid. That's it. 4 walls of wood, straw bales, or even stacked stones with an old window or sheet of plastic on top. The sun shines through the lid, heats the soil inside, and the walls trap that heat overnight. During World War II, families built cold frames from whatever materials they could find. Old window sashes from demolished buildings, scrap lumber from shipping crates, glass from broken picture frames. The construction didn't need to be pretty. It needed to work. And it worked spectacularly. A simple cold frame raises the temperature inside by 10 to 20 degrees compared to outside air. That's the difference between frozen ground and growing soil. That's the difference between dead plants and thriving vegetables. That's the difference between buying groceries and harvesting dinner. Victory gardeners placed cold frames against south-facing walls where they captured maximum winter sunlight. The wall behind them absorbed heat during the day and radiated it back at night. Some families banked straw bales around the frames for additional insulation. Others dug the frames into the ground so the earth itself provided warmth. The crops inside kept growing while snow piled up outside. Lettuce, spinach, kale, chard, carrots, radishes, Asian greens. Anything that tolerated cool weather thrived inside cold frames through the darkest months of winter. Families harvested fresh salads in January while their neighbors ate canned vegetables. The USDA actually documented cold frame productivity during the war. They wanted to know if these simple structures could meaningfully contribute to food security. The results shocked everyone, except the gardeners already using them. Properly managed cold frames produced fresh vegetables from October through April in northern climates. 6 additional months of harvest from a structure that cost less than a week's groceries to build. The math was undeniable. After the war, cold frames quietly disappeared from gardening education. Hardware stores stopped selling the simple hardware needed to build them. Extension agents stopped mentioning them in recommendations. A technology that had fed families for centuries was treated as a quaint historical curiosity rather than a practical food production system. The grocery industry preferred customers who believed winter vegetables came from trucks, not backyards, and so the cold frame was forgotten. Number 2, the hotbed secret. If cold frames extended the season, hotbeds eliminated it entirely. These heated growing boxes allowed World War II families to start seeds in February and harvest crops in December, regardless of what the weather did outside. A hotbed is a cold frame with a heat source buried beneath the growing soil. Traditionally, that heat source was fresh horse manure mixed with straw. As the manure decomposed, it generated temperatures of 100 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Properly constructed, a hotbed maintained warm soil temperatures for 6 to 8 weeks from a single loading of manure. This wasn't primitive technology, this was biological engineering perfected over centuries. During the Second World War, families collected manure from urban stables, farms, and anywhere horses still worked. They mixed it with straw, leaves, or other carbon materials at specific ratios that controlled the heat output. Too much nitrogen and the bed overheated. Too little and it never warmed properly. The gardeners who mastered this balance grew crops that seemed impossible. Tomato seedlings started in February, hotbeds were transplanted outside in May, 6 weeks ahead of gardeners waiting for warm soil. Pepper plants got similar head starts. Eggplants, melons, and other heat-loving crops gained 2 months of growing time from hotbed starts. But hotbeds weren't just for starting seeds. Families grew actual crops inside hotbeds through winter. Lettuce planted in October was harvested in December. Radishes sown in November were pulled in January. The biological heat from decomposing manure kept the soil warm enough for continuous production even when outside temperatures dropped below freezing. Some gardeners built hotbeds in sequences, loading fresh manure into new beds as old ones cooled. This created a continuous supply of heated growing space throughout winter. While the world outside froze, these gardens never stopped producing. The manure that fueled hotbeds cost nothing if you knew where to find it. Stables were happy to have it removed. Farmers used it for gardens before it went to fields. The waste product of transportation became the fuel for year-round food production. After the war, cars replaced horses and manure became scarce in urban areas. But the real reason hotbeds disappeared was simpler. They created independence. Gardeners who could start their own seeds didn't need to buy transplants. Families who grew food year-round didn't need grocery stores in winter. The seed industry and the grocery industry both needed that independence to end. And so hotbeds joined cold frames in the category of forgotten knowledge. Number 3, the succession planting system. Most modern gardeners make a critical mistake. They plant everything at once, harvest for a few weeks, and then watch their garden decline into unproductive chaos. The feast or famine approach means too much food in August and nothing in October. World War II. Families couldn't afford this inefficiency. They needed steady production, not seasonal gluts. And they achieved it through succession planting. A system so simple that its absence from modern gardening education can only be deliberate. Succession planting means sowing the same crop multiple times throughout the season, spaced at intervals that ensure continuous harvest. Instead of planting 50 lettuce seeds in May and watching them all mature in July, you plant 10 seeds every 2 weeks from March through September. The result is 10 heads of lettuce ready every 2 weeks for 7 months, instead of 50 heads ready at once for 2 weeks. During World War II, families maintained planting calendars that scheduled new sowings throughout the year. Radishes every 2 weeks from early spring through late fall. Lettuce every 3 weeks from cold frame starts in February through cold frame finishes in November. Beans every 3 weeks from May through August. This systematic approach transformed gardens from single harvest events into continuous production systems. The technique required no special equipment, no expensive inputs, no expertise beyond basic record keeping, just the discipline to plant something new every week or two throughout the entire year. Victory garden guides from the 1940s dedicated entire sections to succession planting schedules. They provided charts showing exactly when to plant each crop for continuous harvest. They treated year-round production as normal and achievable, not exceptional and difficult. After the war, this information disappeared from mainstream gardening education. Seed packets stopped, including succession planting instructions. Garden books focused on single plantings with defined seasons. The idea of year-round harvest became associated with commercial farming rather than backyard gardening. The grocery industry needed you to believe that continuous fresh vegetables required industrial production. The seed industry needed you to buy all your seeds at once in spring. Neither benefited from teaching you a system that produced food every week of the year from knowledge alone. Number 4, the winter harvest crops. Some vegetables don't just tolerate winter, they prefer it. They taste better after frost. They grow when nothing else will. And World War II families knew exactly which crops to plant for harvest in the darkest months. Kale is the most famous winter crop, but it's only the beginning. Mashi, also called corn salad, forms perfect rosettes of mild, nutty leaves that laugh at temperatures down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. It actually grows better in cool weather than warm. Plant it in September and harvest through March in most climates. Claytonia, called miner's lettuce, produces succulent leaves all winter with minimal protection. It was so important to overwintering populations during the gold rush that it earned its common name from the miners who survived on it. Winter purslane thrives in cold frames through the harshest months, providing fresh greens when nothing else grows. Its thick, succulent leaves hold moisture that makes them uniquely refreshing in dry winter months. Brussels sprouts actually require frost to develop their best flavor. The cold converts starches to sugars, transforming bitter sprouts into sweet, nutty morsels. WWII families left them standing in the garden until Christmas, or later, harvesting as needed. Parsnips and carrots can overwinter in the ground itself, protected by mulch, available for harvest whenever the soil can be dug. Some gardeners prefer to leave these roots in place until spring, enjoying the intensified sweetness that months of cold storage produces. Leeks stand through any winter, their hardy leaves brushing off snow and ice that would kill lesser alliums. Fresh leek soup in January was a reality for families who knew which crops to plant. The list continues. Winter lettuce varieties, cold hardy spinach, overwintering onions, perennial vegetables that emerge early and persist late, an entire catalog of crops bred specifically for cold season harvest. During World War II, seed catalogs offered dozens of winter-specific varieties. They were labeled for fall planting and winter harvest. Gardeners knew which ones to choose because the information was readily available. After the war, winter varieties began disappearing from catalogs. The greenhouse industry preferred selling you out-of-season tomatoes to teaching you to grow your own winter greens. The categories collapsed, the varieties vanished, and the knowledge of what to plant for winter harvest disappeared with them. Number 5, the storage integration method. Year-round eating during World War II didn't mean year-round fresh harvest for every single vegetable. It meant integrating fresh production with strategic storage so that something was always available, regardless of season. Families maintained root cellars where potatoes, carrots, beets, turnips, cabbage, and squash lasted 6 months or more. They canned tomatoes and green beans and pickles for winter use. They dried apples and herbs and peppers for preservation without refrigeration. But here's what modern gardening has forgotten. Fresh and stored production were planned together as a single system. While canned tomatoes provided acid and flavor in February, cold frames provided fresh greens for the same meals. While stored potatoes offered carbohydrates in March, overwintered parsnips offered fresh alternatives. The storage and fresh systems complemented each other, filling gaps that neither could fill alone. WWII families calculated their storage needs based on family size and winter length. They knew exactly how many pounds of potatoes to grow for winter storage, exactly how many quarts of tomatoes to can, exactly how many cabbages to pile in the root cellar. Then they calculated their fresh production separately. How much cold frame space for winter greens? How many succession plantings for fall harvests? How many overwintering crops for spring emergence? The two systems together meant that January meals included both stored vegetables from summer harvest and fresh vegetables from winter production. Variety came from integration, not from choosing one approach or the other. Modern gardening education treats storage and fresh production as separate topics. Canning is one skill, gardening is another. The connection between them has been severed, leaving gardeners unable to plan integrated systems that our grandparents built instinctively. The food industry benefits from this separation. If you don't know how to integrate storage and fresh production, you'll buy groceries to fill the gaps. If you don't understand the whole system, you'll depend on stores for what you could produce yourself. Number 6, the perennial foundation. Annual vegetables get all the attention, but World War II families knew that perennial crops formed the foundation of year-round eating. Plants that came back every year, producing food without replanting, anchoring the garden through every season. Asparagus was the first fresh harvest of spring, emerging when annual gardens were still frozen mud. A mature asparagus bed produces for 20 years or more, providing pounds of spears every April and May without any planting. Rhubarb followed close behind, offering tart stalks for pies and preserves, while families waited for summer crops to mature. One rhubarb plant lasts decades, returning larger every year. Perennial onions provided green onion flavor year-round. Egyptian walking onions, potato onions, and multiplier onions all overwintered and emerged early, filling the allium gap before annual onions were ready. Sorrel delivered lemony greens from early spring through late fall, a perennial salad component that required planting exactly once. Jerusalem artichokes produced tubers from October through April, persisting in frozen ground until dug, providing fresh food when storage supplies ran low. Good King Henry, Turkish rocket, sea kale, and other perennial vegetables that we covered in previous videos all contributed to the year-round system. They weren't novelties. They were essential components of continuous food production. The perennial foundation meant that something was always ready to harvest, even if annual plantings failed. Disease could wipe out tomatoes, but the asparagus still produced. Drought could stunt beans, but the Jerusalem artichokes still thrived. The perennials provided insurance that annual crops couldn't match. After the war, perennial vegetables were quietly removed from seed catalogs. We've covered why in other videos. The seed industry can't profit from plants you never replant. But the effect on year-round gardening was devastating. Without perennial anchors, modern gardens have gaps that annual crops cannot fill. Early spring and late fall become dead zones. Year-round production becomes impossible without the plants that bridge the seasons. Number 7, the complete system. Individually, each technique in this video extends the season by weeks or months. Combined, they eliminate the concept of a growing season entirely. Here's how World War II families assembled the complete system. Perennial crops anchored the calendar, providing asparagus and rhubarb in April, Jerusalem artichokes from October through March, and perennial greens throughout the growing season. Hotbeds started seeds in February, giving heat-loving crops a 2-month head start. Tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants were established plants by the time other gardeners were just buying transplants. Succession planting ensured continuous harvest of quick-maturing crops from March through November. Something new was always ready, while something else was just being planted. Winter harvest crops filled the cold months. Kale, mache, claytonia, Brussels, sprouts, leeks, and carrots all provided fresh food while snow covered the ground. Cold frames protected tender crops in fall and started hardy crops in early spring, adding 4 to 6 months to the usable growing season. Storage integration filled remaining gaps. Canned, dried, and root-cellared vegetables from summer harvests complemented fresh winter production for complete nutrition year-round. The system required planning, but not expertise. Effort, but not expense. Knowledge, but not equipment. A family with a modest backyard garden could eat fresh or stored vegetables from their own production every single day of the year. No grocery store required, no supply chain needed, no dependency on systems that could fail. This complete system was standard knowledge before 1950. Garden books taught it, extension agents recommended it, families practiced it as a matter of course. Then something changed. The grocery industry consolidated. Supermarkets replaced local food production as the primary source of vegetables. Year-round fresh produce, shipped from Florida and California and Mexico, became available in every store. The industry needed customers. They needed people who believed that winter gardening was impractical, that year-round production required industrial scale, that backyard gardens were summer hobbies, not survival systems. So they stopped teaching the techniques. Cold frames disappeared from hardware stores. Hotbeds became historical curiosities. Winter crop varieties vanished from catalogs. Succession planting charts were removed from seed packets. The integrated system that had fed families for generations was dismantled piece by piece. Within a generation, the knowledge was gone. Gardeners today accept a 5-month growing season as natural, unaware that their grandparents harvested 12 months of the year. They spend half their lives buying vegetables they could grow themselves, not because the techniques don't work, but because no one taught them. The grocery industry won. Your dependence is their business model. But the knowledge isn't gone. It's been buried, not destroyed. The techniques still work exactly as they worked 80 years ago. The seeds still grow. The cold frames still trap heat. The storage methods still preserve food. The only thing missing is your decision to use them. Start this fall. Build one cold frame, plant winter crops, prove to yourself that December harvest is possible. Next year, add hotbeds, implement succession planning. Establish perennials. Each season, your system becomes more complete. Your dependence becomes less total. Within 3 years, you can have what your great-grandparents had: vegetables every month, fresh food in February, independence from systems designed to keep you buying. The grocery industry hopes you never learn this. They've spent 70 years making sure you wouldn't. Prove them wrong. Subscribe for more knowledge they don't want you to have. Share this with everyone still buying vegetables in winter. And build your first cold frame this weekend. Because the only thing standing between you and year-round food is the lie that it's impossible. I'll see you in the next video.